A glamorous billionaire who has always controlled the world meets a quiet, deaf artist who sees truth in silence. In a love that transcends words, Isabella and Clara navigate high society, personal fears, and the weight of legacy, discovering that true love doesn't need a voice, it only needs hearts brave enough to listen. And when their love expands into family, they learn that the most powerful connections are forged not in sound, but in the spaces between. The first morning of their marriage began with rain. It wasn't the kind that spoiled a day, it was soft, steady, the kind that made the world slow down. Florence shimmered outside the tall windows, its rooftops glistening under the gray. Inside the honeymoon suite, the air smelled faintly of lilies and perfume, of silk and sleep. Isabella Moretti woke to quiet, not the empty kind, but the peaceful kind. Beside her, Clara lay curled beneath the sheets, her bare shoulder exposed, the faintest smile lingering at her lips. For a long moment Isabella simply watched her, the sound of rain filling the space where words would have been. The billionaire who'd spent years commanding the world's attention suddenly wanted nothing more than this: the warmth of her wife's body, the weight of her hand resting where Isabella's heartbeat was. "Clara," she whispered, as if saying the name would make it more real. Clara's eyes opened, silver gray and calm. She looked at Isabella for a moment, then smiled, "Sleep soft." She didn't need to speak. Her hand reached for the bedside notepad, and she wrote, "Good morning, my love." Isabella leaned close, kissed the words before they dried, and whispered against Clara's skin, "Good morning, my heart." 2 months later, they moved to a villa on the Amalfi Coast, white walls, arched windows, and the sound of the sea below like a pulse that never stopped. Clara had chosen it for the light, Isabella had chosen it for the view. Both found what they needed there: peace. The house was theirs in a way nothing else had been. No paparazzi, no boardrooms, no polished lies. Just lemon trees, salt air, and a horizon wide enough to dream in. Isabella learned the shape of silence. She stopped wearing her heels inside, stopped checking her phone first thing every morning. She learned to listen, not with her ears, but her eyes. Clara, too, began to open in ways she hadn't before. The weight of being the deaf artist fell away. She painted barefoot, hair loose, laughter silent but contagious. Her canvases filled with color, blues of the ocean, golds of sunlight caught on glass, and soft streaks of silver, Isabella's reflection, again and again. Sometimes, Isabella would pause in her work just to watch her wife move. The rhythm of her painting was slow, hypnotic. When she concentrated, she bit her lip, a detail Isabella found devastatingly beautiful. And on the evenings when the world burned pink outside their windows, Clara would take Isabella's hand and lead her outside, barefoot into the grass, to watch the sun drown in the sea. Their peace didn't go unnoticed. News outlets picked up whispers of the billionaire and the deaf artist, a love story too poetic for tabloids to resist. Headlines called them an unlikely pair, a beautiful scandal, a portrait of defiance. For a few days, Isabella tried to ignore it. She closed her laptop. She told herself she didn't care. But one morning, she caught sight of a photograph, the two of them on the terrace, Clara's head on her shoulder, their hands intertwined. It had been taken without permission. Her stomach turned. The instinct to protect was immediate, fierce. She deleted the articles, closed every screen, and stormed outside where the sea wind could carry her anger away. When she came back inside, Clara was waiting, calm, composed, her expression unreadable. She reached for Isabella's hand and signed slowly, "Let them look. They'll see love, not scandal." Something in Isabella broke. She sank to her knees, resting her head in Clara's lap. "I don't want them to ruin this," she whispered. Clara touched her face, gentle as a breath. "They can't," she signed. "This is ours." Their life became a collection of quiet rituals. In the mornings, Isabella made coffee while Clara painted. Sometimes they swapped, Clara burned the toast, Isabella spilled the espresso, and they'd both laugh until the world felt young again. They took long walks along the cliffs, sharing silence that said more than conversation ever could. Isabella learned to sign little phrases. You're beautiful. I missed you. Stay with me. Her hands were clumsy at first, but Clara never corrected her harshly. She'd take Isabella's fingers and guide them through the air until the shapes became soft and right. Sometimes they'd go days without leaving the villa. Other times, they'd drive to nearby towns, wandering through markets and galleries, hand in hand. People stared sometimes, but they didn't care. They had built their own language, half words, half touches, entirely love. At night, they would lie together by the window, watching the lights of fishing boats drift like stars across the water. Isabella often fell asleep with her face in Clara's hair, breathing in the scent of paint and salt. There were hard days too. Clara struggled with her hearing aids when storms came. The feedback stung like needles. Isabella learned how to hold her until the pain passed, whispering stories against her skin even though Clara couldn't hear them, because comfort didn't need sound. Isabella had her battles as well. Sometimes her old world, board meetings, investors, decisions, crept back in. She'd sit awake late at night, blue light flickering on her face, feeling the pull of responsibility against the life she'd built. Clara would wake, come behind her, and rest her hands over Isabella's shoulders. Come back to bed, she'd sign. You're missing the good parts of the night. And Isabella would. Always. It started on a spring afternoon. Clara sat in her studio, brush moving in delicate arcs, the canvas filling with the shape of a small child running across a beach. Isabella entered quietly, carrying tea. When she saw the painting, she froze. Who's that? She asked softly. Clara looked at her, then wrote on her sketchpad. Maybe ours one day. Isabella felt something deep and unexpected stir within her, fear, hope, longing. She'd never seen herself as a mother. Power had been her language, not tenderness. But when she looked at Clara's eyes, bright with quiet dreams, she whispered, maybe ours. That night, they lay awake, holding each other, their hearts beating in sync with the sea beyond the window. There were hard days too. Clara struggled with her hearing aids when storms came. The feedback stung like needles. Isabella learned how to hold her until the pain passed, whispering stories against her skin even though Clara couldn't hear them, because comfort didn't need sound. Isabella had her battles as well. Sometimes her old world, board meetings, investors, decisions, crept back in. She'd sit awake late at night, blue light flickering on her face, feeling the pull of responsibility against the life she'd built. The years that followed were slow, golden, and kind. Spring came with new art exhibitions. Clara's paintings began to sell across Europe. Isabella stood beside her at each one, elegant and proud, her arm around her wife's waist. People admired the work, not realizing they were also admiring their love made visible on canvas. Summer brought lazy mornings, salt-sticky skin, and wine under the stars. Autumn meant markets, laughter, scarves, and quiet dinners by candlelight. Winter wrapped their villa in fog and warmth, evenings spent by the fire, Clara sketching while Isabella read aloud in a soft, steady voice. Every season had its rhythm, its small joys. Every silence between them was alive. One night, after a storm had swept the coast clean, they stood on the balcony wrapped in a single blanket. The sea glimmered dark beneath them. Clara leaned her head against Isabella's shoulder and signed, "Are you happy?" Isabella didn't answer right away. She looked out at the water, at the horizon that had become their home, and thought of everything they'd survived, the noise, the eyes, the world that didn't understand silence as love. Finally, she turned to her wife, eyes soft. "I was powerful before," she whispered, "but now I'm alive." Clara smiled, tears slipping down her cheeks. She signed, "Then we're both home." Years later, the villa still stood white against the cliffs. The lemon trees had grown tall. Paintings covered every wall, Clara's life in color, Isabella's heart in shadow and light. One morning, as dawn rose pink over the sea, Isabella found Clara in the garden, painting again, their home, the sea, and two figures hand in hand. When Clara saw her watching, she signed, "It's still us." Isabella smiled. always will be. And as the day broke around them, light spilling over their skin, the waves singing softly below, the world outside faded, until all that remained was love. Not loud, not perfect, but certain. A love that had learned how to live in silence, and yet speak forever. The year the sea bloomed with light, everything changed. It was late summer, and the Amalfi Coast was alive, the kind of golden, endless season where the air smelled of salt and lemons, and time itself seemed to slow to match the waves. Their villa, perched above the cliffs, had become not just a home, but a heartbeat, a quiet rhythm that matched the rise and fall of the tide below. Isabella and Clara had built a life of soft rituals. Coffee on the terrace. Walks along the cliffs. The comfort of shared glances across candlelight. They were happy, truly, but lately, there was a new quiet in Clara's eyes, something distant and tender. One evening, after dinner, Isabella found her wife in the garden, sitting beneath the olive tree. The sun was falling, painting Clara's face with amber light. In her lap was a small sketchbook. Isabella knelt beside her. "What are you drawing?" Clara smiled faintly and turned the page toward her. It was a child, a little girl, barefoot, standing by the sea. Her eyes were the color of dawn, her hair a tumble of soft curls. "She came to me in a dream," Clara wrote. "She was looking for us." Isabella's breath caught. Something deep inside her shifted, a quiet, fragile spark that frightened her with its tenderness. "Looking for us," she whispered. Clara nodded, signing slowly, "Our daughter." At first, the thought lived only in their nights. Isabella would wake from dreams of small footsteps echoing through the villa, of laughter like sunlight, of little hands tugging at her sleeves. She'd find Clara awake too, staring out the window as if listening to something far away. They began to talk, in notes, in signs, in silence. About motherhood. About love that grew beyond the two of them. Isabella was cautious, Clara was certain. One night, as the rain whispered against their windows, Isabella asked, "Would we be enough for her?" Clara wrote simply, "We are enough for each other. That's what she will learn from us." The words stayed with Isabella long after the ink dried. Months passed in a blur of calls and papers. They began the process of adoption, slow, bureaucratic, and heavy with expectation. The world wanted forms, interviews, proof. Proof that love could be structured, measured, and signed off. Isabella, with her influence, could move mountains, yet this was different. This wasn't a deal to negotiate. This was trust to earn. Clara, ever calm, sat through each meeting with quiet grace, her hand in Isabella's. The social workers asked questions, and Clara's interpreter spoke gently, translating her signed responses, about home, safety, art, love. One interviewer asked, "What made you want to adopt?" Clara hesitated, then signed, "Because love found us, and now it wants to grow." Isabella watched the woman nod, moved in a way she hadn't expected. It happened in winter. A call came one morning, a little girl, 6 years old, waiting in Florence. No family. Curious eyes. Quiet, like Clara. Her name was Luna. Isabella froze when she heard it. The name felt like fate, soft, luminous, meant for their world. They drove north the next day. The orphanage stood near the Arno River, gray against the pale sky. Isabella had never been so nervous. For once, her confidence, that cool armor she wore so easily, cracked. Inside, Luna sat on a small chair, sketching in silence. When she looked up, her eyes were the same soft gray as the sea outside their villa. Clara approached first, kneeling to meet her gaze. She signed slowly, "Hello." Luna hesitated, then smiled shyly and signed back, "Hello." She was deaf. Clara's hand trembled as she reached out. Luna didn't pull away. Isabella watched, her throat tightening, her heart full of something she didn't yet have a name for. When Luna's small fingers wrapped around Clara's, Isabella understood. She wasn't entering a new chapter. She was returning to one that had been waiting for her all along. The first weeks were fragile, a rhythm learned slowly, like a new language. Luna was quiet but observant, shy but bright. She filled their villa with small, curious energy, sketching beside Clara, following Isabella through the garden, fascinated by the sea. At night, she'd stand at the balcony, watching the waves with wide eyes. When Isabella asked what she was thinking, Luna wrote in her small notebook. "The sea talks to me. It sounds like home." It undid Isabella completely. Clara painted her often, sometimes with the sea behind her, sometimes asleep in the sunlight. Isabella framed each painting. The house began to feel fuller, alive with laughter that didn't need sound. They taught Luna to cook, to paint, to dance barefoot on the grass. Isabella taught her to be fearless, Clara taught her to be kind. And Luna, in her small way, taught them both what? Every family has a storm. Theirs came quietly. One evening, Luna came home from school with tears in her eyes. Some children had mocked her signing, calling her broken. Isabella's fury was volcanic. She wanted to march to the school, demand apologies, shake the world until it understood that her daughter was perfect. But Clara stopped her. She knelt before Luna, took her hands, and signed gently, "They don't know how to listen yet." Then she signed again, slower this time, "Show them." That night, Luna painted. A single figure standing beneath a storm, surrounded by light. When she showed it to Isabella, she smiled shyly. "This is me," she signed. "Strong." Isabella wept openly, gathering her daughter close. "You are," she whispered. "You are stronger than the sea." Years passed like seasons. Luna grew. Clara's hair silvered. Isabella's sharp edges softened. Their villa became a museum of their shared lives, walls covered in paintings, photographs, love that could fill 100 rooms. Sometimes, when the sun set, the three of them would stand together on the terrace, the waves glowing below. Luna would rest her head against Clara's shoulder, and Isabella would hold them both. Their home was no longer just a refuge, it was a story told in touch, in art, in silence, in laughter. And when strangers looked at them, the billionaire, the artist, and the little girl who listened with her heart, they saw something rare. Something true. On Luna's 18th birthday, she held an exhibition, The Sound of Light. Paintings filled the Florence gallery, portraits of her mothers, of the sea, of silence as beauty. Isabella stood at the back, watching her daughter sign to the crowd, graceful and assured. "This is for my mothers," Luna said through her interpreter. "For the women who taught me that love doesn't need to be heard to be felt. And that silence, when shared, can be the loudest language of all." When the applause came, Isabella closed her eyes. She could almost hear it. Years later, long after the world had moved on, the villa by the sea remained. The lemon trees bloomed. The air smelled of paint, of sea salt, of memory. Clara and Isabella would sit together by the window, Luna's paintings on the walls around them. Sometimes, they'd say nothing for hours, hands intertwined, hearts steady. The sea kept whispering. The house kept listening. And love, the quiet, unshakable kind, kept breathing between them. The sea had changed color. It was deeper now, a shade between indigo and memory, the kind of blue that held both loss and peace. Luna stood at the edge of the cliffs where her mothers had once stood, the wind threading through her hair, the horizon burning with the first light of dawn. Beneath her feet, the world hummed, the same heartbeat that had filled her childhood, the same rhythm she had fallen asleep to between them. She closed her eyes. The sound of waves was the sound of home. She hadn't planned to come back. Years had passed since the funerals, since the villa had gone quiet, since she'd taken their ashes to the sea and whispered her goodbye. But something, maybe the wind, maybe time, had called her home again. The gate creaked open as if recognizing her. The path was overgrown, the lemon trees bowed heavy with fruit. When she reached the front door, her hands trembled before the key even turned. Inside, the house breathed. Every room felt alive, dust motes glinting like tiny stars, the faint scent of paint and lilies clinging to the air. On the table still lay Clara's brushes, each one neatly cleaned. On the bookshelf, a note in Isabella's slanted handwriting, "Remember to breathe." Luna smiled through the ache in her chest. "I'm here," she signed into the empty air. "I came back." The studio was the heart of the house, light pouring through tall windows, canvases leaning against every wall. On the largest easel hung Clara's last unfinished painting, two women holding hands beneath an endless sky. The strokes were gentle, incomplete, yet alive. Luna ran her fingertips across the paint, feeling the texture like the ridges of a heartbeat. Beneath it, she noticed a small wooden box. Inside were letters, dozens of them, tied with a silk ribbon. All addressed to her. "My Luna. If you ever find these, know that you were our greatest masterpiece. We tried to build a world where silence was not a wound but a song, where love did not shout to be real. Take what we made, and make it your own. Love, always, Mama Clara." Luna pressed the paper to her lips, tears wetting the ink. She whispered, "I will." That night, Luna dreamed of the sea. She saw her mother standing on the shore, Isabella in white, radiant as dawn, Clara barefoot, her hand outstretched. Between them stretched the water, luminous and infinite. They didn't call to her. They didn't need to. Their faces said everything. "Come find us." When she woke, the world felt lighter, as though something inside her had shifted. She packed a single bag, sketchbooks, brushes, one photograph of them, and left at sunrise. The road curved along the coastline, the sky bruised with pink. Every mile was a heartbeat closer to them. She traveled for weeks, following the old letters Isabella had once written to Clara, a trail of love mapped across Italy. In each town, Luna painted a small canvas and left it behind, a gesture of gratitude, a way to stitch their memory into the world. In Naples, she painted a portrait of them at the harbor, Clara laughing, Isabella pretending not to. In Florence, she left a painting of 3 silhouettes on a bridge at dusk. In Venice, she painted the reflection of 2 hands reaching across the water. People began to notice, whispers of the deaf artist who paints silence spread from gallery to gallery. But Luna wasn't chasing fame. She was following ghosts. 5. The island. By autumn, she reached Elba. The island was quiet, fishermen at dawn, children playing near the docks, the scent of salt and rosemary. She rented a small cottage facing the sea. Each morning she woke with the sun, carried her easel to the beach, and painted until the light faded. At night, she sat by the window with a candle burning low, sketching from memory, Clara's gentle smile, Isabella's sharp eyes softening only for her. But one evening, as the tide crept high, she stopped painting. Instead, she walked into the water. The waves kissed her knees, her waist, her heart. The horizon shimmered silver. And in that endless blue, she finally understood. The ocean between them wasn't separation, it was connection. It was love made vast. She whispered into the wind, "You never left me." The next day, she began her greatest work. A canvas taller than she was, wide as a doorway. She painted for weeks, letting the sea dictate the colors, the blues of grief, the whites of memory, the golds of forgiveness. At the center, 2 figures, one reaching through water, one reaching back. Between them, not distance, but light. When it was finished, she signed the bottom corner with trembling hands. Luna Moretti, The Ocean Between Us. Months later, the painting hung in Florence, under soft lights, surrounded by quiet awe. The audience was still as Luna stood before her work. Her interpreter waited beside her, ready to translate, but Luna lifted her hands and signed slowly, gracefully. "This painting is for them. For my mothers, Isabella and Clara Moretti. They taught me that silence isn't the absence of sound, it's the presence of understanding. That love doesn't end when the heart stops, it becomes the sea, the sky, the light between us." When she finished, the room erupted in applause. Luna smiled, a slow, luminous smile, and for a moment, she could almost see them in the crowd. Clara, calm and glowing. Isabella, elegant, eyes bright with pride. Two hands intertwined. Watching her. Home. Later that night, Luna returned to the villa by the sea. The moon hung low, painting the waves silver. She stood where her mother's once had, the wind lifting her hair, the air thick with salt and memory. She signed into the night, "I love you." The wind carried the words away, and the tide answered, rolling in soft and strong, reaching for her feet as if to say, "We know." She closed her eyes, let the sea touch her, and breathed in the silence. Everything, love, loss, life, came together there, in that quiet between sound and sky. The ocean moved. And for the first time, she didn't feel the distance at all. Years had passed. The villa by the Amalfi Cliffs had softened with age. The paint was weathered, the lemon trees taller than anyone remembered, and the waves below carried the same ancient rhythm. But the house was alive, still echoing with laughter, footsteps, and the memory of hands that had built a world here. Luna stood on the terrace, now older, serene. She had children of her own, twins, a boy and a girl, curious and bright. Their small hands clutched hers as she guided them along the balcony. "Mama," one whispered, eyes wide. "Tell us about them." She smiled, brushing hair from their faces. "About who?" "The women who made you," the other said. "The ones who loved each other so much, they built the sea." Luna laughed softly. "Yes. They built the sea." The stories. At night, she told them stories of Isabella and Clara. How Isabella Moretti had been untouchable, a woman of power, glamour, and fire, and how Clara, quiet and perceptive, had softened her world with patience and truth. How they had loved not in grand gestures alone, but in silences, in brushes of hands, in the rhythm of days spent together. Her children listened, wide-eyed. They traced the stories with their fingers, as if touching the past could make it real. Luna signed parts of the stories for them, passing on the language of her mother, Clara's gift, so they too could speak in silence, and understand the strength it carried. The villa had become a gallery, each room a memory. Paintings by Clara, letters from Isabella, sketches by Luna herself, all woven together, a tapestry of a family's love. The children wandered from room to room, touching brushes, lifting sketches, whispering questions to the walls. One evening, Luna's son asked, did they really love each other that much? She knelt, looking out toward the sea, golden in the fading light. Love isn't measured in words, she signed for her children, or even in time. It's measured in the space we leave for each other in our hearts, and in how we let that love reach others. Her daughter's hand found hers. Like us? Yes, she whispered. Like us. The waves remained their constant companion. Luna often walked to the shore with her children, letting the tide run over their bare feet. She told them how the ocean had been a home to her mothers, a witness to their love, a teacher in patience and permanence. The sea moves like love, she signed, letting the children copy her hand motions. It may separate, but it always connects. The children laughed, splashing water, running barefoot across the sand. Luna watched them, thinking of Isabella's quiet strength, Clara's gentle wisdom, and the lives they had built together, a life that had now expanded beyond one generation, into the next. In the villa studio, Luna placed her final tribute, a painting taller than any wall, spanning light and sea, hands reaching across infinite water. She signed at the bottom, for Isabella and Clara, for the love that became an ocean. Then she turned to her children. One day, she said, you will carry this forward. Not just the stories, but the understanding, that love is quiet, steady, and brave. Her children nodded. They understood in a way words could not convey, because some truths are not spoken. They are felt. At dawn, Luna walked to the cliffs alone. The sun rose slowly, painting the sky in golds and purples. She felt the wind lift her hair and remembered the faces of her mothers, Clara, serene and strong, Isabella, sharp yet gentle, standing on this same cliff, watching the sea. The tide rolled in, reaching high, brushing the rocks below. Luna whispered into the wind, "Thank you." And in that moment, she knew, the love that had shaped her, that had taught her courage and tenderness, would never leave her. It lived in her children, in her paintings, in the rhythm of the sea, in every quiet heartbeat that remembered them. The ocean stretched endlessly before her, infinite, eternal, and full of everything they had been. And Luna, standing at the edge of it all, smiled. She was home. The story of Isabella, Clara, and Luna ends not with silence, but with resonance, a legacy carried in art, memory, and love that stretches across generations, as vast and enduring as the sea itself. Years later, their love lives on in the daughter they raised and the home they built, a quiet, enduring testament that true love doesn't fade with time. Across the waves, through memory and art, Isabella and Clara's hearts continue to speak, proving that some bonds are eternal, even when the world falls silent. Turn on notifications bell to never miss a story. Share your thoughts in the comments, we love hearing from our viewers.